Well, first I'd like to thank the organization committee for the opportunity to present my work here. Then, I'd like to start by addressing something that stands right at the intersection of method, personal preference, and the objective conditions in which this research is being made. This is an ongoing research, and after all, the theme is very new, as NFTs have arguably no more than 5, 6 years of existence, and only by the end of last year they started gaining more visibility. And second, well, there came COVID and lockdowns, children out of school, and all that. So those played a very special role in the constraints of this research. It's an ethnographic research about NFTs, that is non-fungible tokens. We'll get to it in a bit. And this is being made especially on virtual environments, especially Clubhouse and Twitter. Without getting too much into specifics, the methodological pathways I have been favoring this research stem directly from all this offered me the opportunity to dive right into the ethnographic research in itself. This isn't at all to say that I am espousing a somewhat naive view of field work, according to which the researcher enters into it without any prior knowledge and gains a direct understanding of how that human group lives. This means, however, that I will deal with the big questions that this team raises almost exclusively from the perspective of the actors involved, consciously bypassing, at least for now, debates like those that range from gig economy, intellectual property, and even more philosophical ones like theories of money and of art, or the problem of base reality versus simulations, something which is very strong in this field because of metaverses and things like that. These matters are touched upon only to the extent that the actors raise them and discuss them, and although I fully acknowledge that if one is to do serious research, the familiarity with the academic literature on them is of utmost importance. On the other hand, I must admit that I think it must occupy a very specific place. In general, I am somewhat suspicious of what other people in other contexts had to say about problems that may or may not be exactly the same as those that occupy the people with which I have been interacting in the field. Of course, this could lead us very far into the weeds discussing epistemology and the problem of theory in the social sciences. And this isn't really the place to do it, nor do we have time to do it. So I'll just limit myself to saying that I believe that what others said in other contexts matter insofar as, first, they are brought into the context of the research by the actors themselves. Fully acknowledge as well that the actors themselves is not a simple thing to define, but let's go on with this. And second, and this is very important, as sort of I'm talking about the place of theory, sort of lenses that help the researcher see and think about what the researcher is dealing with in the field. So I think the age-old debate on new forms of art and how they fit into the history of human culture, like new arts, the cinema, games, things like that, has found another node around which new and old issues have been recently clustering. This is due, I believe, to the fact that the problem of so-called traditional art versus digital art has already been discussed to death, and no agreement has been settled yet. Still, artists on both sides of the divide eventually went on with their lives, with their businesses, regardless. Let's take, first of all, the visual arts, more specifically, art in the form of images, either static or animated, doesn't matter, as a point of departure. So, for our purposes, digital art comprises images created or at least finalized through digital means, ranging from algorithmic or self-generated images, abstract or otherwise, to realistic pieces made with the input of an artist's gestures on electronic devices. Granted, the distinction often gets blurry, yes, but let's not split hairs too much here. So I will draw the line by saying that any artwork whose final form is a computer file is a work of digital art. This will be our operational definition. After all, when all is said and done, a digital painting is a file, a plain and simple JPEG, or whatever format the artist or the client prefers. What really matters to us here is that there is no intrinsic difference between a piece of digital art and a copy of it. Although a bit of a stretch, it's as if there was no original, an old theme that can feel almost fresh depending on how one looks at it. After all, bronze sculptures are made from molds, studies, copies, and replicas of masterpieces populate art academies and ateliers since forever, and photography has had to deal with this conundrum since its inception. So let's give an example. Cash bills are the commonest example of a fungible thing. We deal with them in everyday life, and $1 bill is the same as another dollar bill. It doesn't matter. The same goes for cryptocurrencies. For example, Bitcoin. If I have one Bitcoin that I bought at 40K for $4,000, then maybe the price is falling and I panicked and sold it at 38K. Then I watched the price go down until 33, then I rebought at 35, expecting to make some profits and make up for my losses. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all if it was the same Bitcoin or another one. We don't even think about it. That's the whole idea of a fungible thing. It's not the same Bitcoin. We don't even know. It's not material money. It's impossible to know, and nobody thinks about it. But when we switch the conversation to non-fungible tokens, which are NFTs, as we said, we're dealing with a different thing in the sense that each token is unique, and this is what defines it. For the sake of this conversation, we're treating tokens and coins interchangeably. They're not the same thing necessarily, but we'll treat them as the same thing. And for our purposes, a token is any asset that is issued or circulates in a project, a blockchain project. So it functions as a means of payment, but it also can also have other properties. Since we're talking about blockchain projects, as I said, I'll give an example that can help us understand to a minimum level what all this entails and what it all means. Let's suppose we decide to open a digital art gallery. As we saw, a piece of digital art is nothing but a file, and as such, it can be copied verbatim how many times we want to. This potentially puts our digital art project in jeopardy, of course, because an important part of such business is to sell artworks whose value is related to their uniqueness and the importance, however defined, of their creators, of those who created those pieces of art. So if someone can simply pick up their phone, go to the gallery's website, find an artwork that they like, hold their thumb over the image and tap Save to Photos and save it to their own phone's gallery, why would someone spend money buying that piece, especially at a premium? So that's the gist of the problem. This touches on the problem of digital art. This touches on a lot of important themes related to internet culture that we unfortunately won't be able to get into. So exact copies of digital art can be made at the push of a button. Okay, for as many times as we want, or as long as there is space in our cloud storage to accumulate them. So if we sell a piece of art, of digital art, can the person who bought it really claim to possess something unique? If a copy of it is equal to it to the deepest bit level similarity, it's the same file. That's exactly what makes an NFT important for those who advocate in favor of it. In summary, the process of creating an NFT is someone picks up a file, a piece of digital art in this case, creates a smart contract. A smart contract is nothing but a program that runs on a blockchain project. For example, Ethereum, which is the project in which most NFTs are minted. Ethereum is actually a computer made of the combined processing power of the network, the Ethereum network. So we call it EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine. So it's a virtual machine that is run by all these computers, decentralized in a decentralized manner. So someone makes a smart contract, which is a program that defines a series of characteristics and that uses that file, creates a hash from that file, which is a cryptographic operation that is sort of an identity of the file, right? Let's say like this. And then the identity of that file is stored on the blockchain with the smart contract, and a series of operations are allowed or defined, like if I sell, if the person who bought the NFT from me, in case if it was my art, the person, when that person resells it, I may receive some more money because of that, because it was sold. Anytime it is sold, there are lots of use cases, but there's one of them that is very interesting and very important. The artist can define how many NFTs are going to be made from that single piece of art. So let's imagine that Leonardo had some miraculous copying machine that would make exact replicas, clones of the Mona Lisa. Then he decided that he would make 50 Mona Lisas. And each one of them would be the original, or perhaps I should say an original, I'm not sure. They are identical and they are Mona Lisas and they came from Leonardo. NFTs, they are seen as a means of creating scarcity in the digital world, into digital art, but at the same time, there is the very possibility of not making a work of art that's totally scarce, like unique. It's not a matter of uniqueness. It's much more a matter of provenance, sometimes people would say. Perhaps, though I haven't seen any actor use this word, perhaps it could be better defined as authentic instead of original. Some will argue that the actual value of the NFT, as it attests to the fact that the file really came from the author and is not a replica or an apocryphal file, apocryphal work. So this discussion about uniqueness and originality is interesting, not due to its philosophical implications, at least I don't find it interesting because of that, but because there's a divide between those who look from outside the NFT space, let's call it like that, and the insiders. Something that is very clear both on Twitter and Clubhouse rooms I have been to is how questions about NFT fundamentals itself tend to be downplayed. Around February 2021, when the discussion was gaining steam and going mainstream, it was practically impossible to avoid a room about NFTs on Clubhouse. And the general sentiment was one of people explaining what they were, how they worked. Then things started to change. Looking in retrospect, by this time, the dynamics were already getting a bit strange, a bit similar to those pump and dump cryptocurrency groups, which someone can find on Telegram, or Discord, where influencers tend to broadcast their predictions to pump coins and those schemes. But it was very common, as I said, for people to ask about the relationship in the beginning, about the relationship between the art itself and the NFT, because this connection isn't really obvious, at least not as obvious as people who are used to cryptocurrencies, who are in the crypto space, tend to deal with. Then the conversation shifted a bit to how to do it, how to buy, how to interact with Web3 applications, how to interact with crypto wallets, how to set up your MetaMask, which is the most common wallet used for doing this kind of stuff. And that's when the so-called drop parties started as well, which were like conversations rooms where the artists who were launching their NFTs would be present and would talk to people, sort of like a press event, perhaps. Um, and during these parties, it was very common to find a somewhat forceful rhetoric, stimulating people to buy NFTs. Sometimes people reaching the point of explicitly using group coercion, saying things like it is important to help other artists. This is a community taking shape. Each one should do their part to foster it. Buying an NFT is the way to do it. On Twitter, this reached Twitter levels, and then this took the form of endless rows of tweets by members of the community asking people to post links to their NFTs, to retweet things in order to have the chance to have their NFTs bought by someone, to give visibility to other people. People like promising, I'm feeling like buying an NFT now. Everybody post your art here and I'll pick one randomly or pick my favorite. And this was really going crazy by that time. And it's worth noting that by this time, the whole bull market was in full bloom. ETH, which is the Ethereum currency, was trading between 3,000 and 4,000. It reached its all-time high by mid-May of 4,300 and something dollars. And so a piece of art like that easily reaches 1 ETH, 1 ETH and a half. And then there's network fees as well, which we call gas fees. And then during this time, if someone would question the fundamentals or raise questions about the environmental aspect of it, because networks like that consume a lot of energy, especially Bitcoin, Ethereum as well, because of the consensus mechanism. These would tend to be downplayed. People would tend to be sort of left aside. There was no more room for this kind of discussion. There was, and there still is a very strong sentiment of group, and this is all dismissed as FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. This is internet slang. And people saying that the art world, the traditional art world, hates NFTs. People saying that the mainstream art world wants to avoid artists from going into NFTs because this is an opportunity. There was a feeling of gold rush by this time, and I've seen people saying things like, this is a new renaissance. We're going through a new renaissance, a new moment, and everything is going to change. And the famous "let's cut the middleman" was resurfaced this argument. This is very very significant because this is a very old internet tech circles argument that always comes back, even if the platforms are there: OpenSea, Rarible, Super Rare, Nifty Gateway. So there are some sort of middlemen. And ironically, artists, especially the established ones outside of the crypto art space, started to try to find ways of getting into the NFT space, but without running the risk of having their art tainted by the idea of being environmentally irresponsible. So these people would find platforms like I have the example of Jake Parker, which is a famous illustrator, creator of Inktober, is very significant. He posted a picture of the platform where he would make his drop, and he said, more details on my first eco-friendly drop soon. I think this says it all. So to end, I'd like to end with a quotation from Balagis, which is a Twitter user that expresses very well, in my opinion, the whole feeling. The creator economy is becoming part of the crypto economy because legacy social media platforms have no real concept of digital property rights. Yes, I think that's it. Thank you.